Hello and welcome back to Musicians, Politicians, Magicians. Today I'd like to talk about, is there a difference, or what is the difference between colonizers and migrants? And I think it's an interesting question to propose. If we go back in time to the 13 colonies that revolted against England and filed the Declaration of the United States, which is what the United States is now, we have to remember what things really were back then and put them in that context. There were more colonies than the 13 at that time. Others did not choose to participate initially in the revolt against King Edward. So, where do we separate those coming here? Okay, let's define the terms. Let's define immigrant, as the left likes to postulate. Immigrants are coming here because they have to flee their country because of the wars, because of just the bad situations, the lack of food, lack of this, all this climate change stuff, so on and so on and so on, that basically that they have it so bad they're in immediate danger that they must leave to come here. Well, was that not the same case when those fleeing persecution in Europe had to come here? So why are they labeled as colonizers when essentially they were migrants? Now, the left likes to say, oh, everyone's a migrant when it comes to, oh, we all came across New York City and the Statue of Liberty. But when it comes back to the original colonies, they don't like to acknowledge them as migrants. Why is that? That's an interesting question, because that's exactly what they were. And what we have to put into context is the reality of the numbers. The 13 colonies that formed the Union only amounted to 6 million people. We have that crossing the borders every other month. So again, I ask the question, when do migrants become colonizers? Because as we all know right now, the migrants coming across the southern border have set up colonized cities completely. I'm not talking about infiltrating other cities and becoming part of it. I'm talking about going out in the desert, going out in the middle of nowhere and creating their own cities. Look it up. You can see it for yourself on the internet. Google it. This stuff is going on. So at what point do migrants become colonizers? Because if they're going to say that those petty little 6 million people that originally came here conquered everything else, while at the same time bringing that amount plus every other month, but yet saying those are just migrants, well, we're not talking apples to apples, oranges to oranges, cherries to cherries, and they're just cherry picking what they want, relabeling the terms and making you feel guilty for something that never happened. And that's the reality of what's really going on. If today's people crossing the border are migrants and coming into this, and they should be allowed, then should that not apply to the people fleeing Europe when they were coming across and leaving? Openly accepted by those here at the times, which is why we have Thanksgiving, by the way, because of the uniting of the acceptance of those that came fleeing where they needed to flee, coming as migrants. But somewhere along the line, the left decided to relabel those migrants seeking a new life for themselves and to term them colonizers and make them evil. And somehow those little tiny 13 colonies that only existed way up on the eastern part of the United States coast conquered Every indigenous species across the entire continent. Plus and minus too, don't you know? Give me a break, people. Give me a break. It's amazing how people will buy into a false history. It's amazing how even those of their own heritage don't really know it. And you want to know why? They're not getting it firsthand. Families don't exist at that level anymore, do they? They're getting a prefabricated heritage given them to them by some authority figure that they think is telling them the truth. Now, there's a lot of truth to it, which is why it's so believable. There's a lot of truth to Alex Jones, too, which is why he has a lot of people follow him. But that 10% that's a lie, it's a real doozy, isn't it? And it flips everything on its head. Alex Jones does it, the governments do it, everyone does it. Why is a common phrase across everywhere, to be honest with you? If I'm being honest with you, why do people have to preemphasize that? It's because subconsciously, those are the liars. Anyone that uses that phrase on you, rest assured everything else they say is a lie, because they think it's as common as breathing. And they don't see an evil in it. They really don't. And that's the sad part. So I'll basically ask the question again. At what point do migrants become colonizers? And if migrants are good and colonizers are evil, at what point do the good become the evil, and why? Isn't that why we all came here? And when I say here, I mean this entire planet. I mean, I know you guys are thinking we're talking about the United States, but why are we limiting ourselves to the United States reservation? And I beg to differ if there's a difference between, you know, the reservation that they think they put the indigenous people on, as opposed to the territory of the United States, as opposed to anything else. Why are we restricting ourselves with any borders? Now, no, I don't believe in open borders as far as there shouldn't be countries. But I do believe that everyone born of this planet is of this planet, and we are all indigenous, and we should all be able to travel anywhere we want, when we want, as long as we are, you know, of moral character and have not committed any crimes that would prevent us from traveling. The problem we have now is they're trying to divide us in ways that we're not meant to be divided. If migrants are a good thing, and everyone fleeing Europe when they came here was a migrant, then I don't understand when they became so-called colonizers. And if that's the case, then in the last, 10 years, the migration from the South, which we know isn't just coming from the Latin American countries, we are also getting an influx from Africa coming up through the southern borders, and from Asian territories coming up through the southern borders. At what point do those migrants become colonizers? At what point do those entering now become as evil as the ones that the left talks about from before as being colonizers? At what point do apples also become apples, oranges become oranges, and we compare everything the same? What's good for a goose is good for a gander, right? And it doesn't end there, does it? The left has everyone with any melanin in them convinced that they're either, brought here falsely or a native of here, and therefore they have all these extra claims and rights that, because poof, magic, and that's just the way it is in their own mind, obviously. Because I'm married to a native, for one, so let's not even go there. She's on the registry with the reservation. Our children are registered, and yeah, it's legit. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that want to go online claiming this and claiming that and calling themselves Indian. Now think about that for a second. They're supposed to be indigenous to this land of America, but they themselves are calling themselves Indian. Does that not sound like brainwashing to you? Because if you are not from India, why would you call yourself Indian? In other words, if you are part of the white nations, then you would understand that, you know, you're either Cherokee, you're this, you're that, you're Navajo, you speak Ojibwa, you know, Anastasia. I mean, all of these things that are native to here, you would call yourself in reference to what you are, what your heritage is, where you come from. In other words, white people don't go, I'm a white person, I come from whiteness, right? That would be ridiculous. Just like black people don't go, I'm a black person, I come from blackness. No. They say they come from where they come from. I myself have an Irish heritage that actually precedes Ireland. And we can get into that in another context of another podcast. But what we're talking about is how people think about themselves that's falsely given to them as propaganda and brainwashing, and they buy it as reality. There are no such things as Indians in the Americas. That term was labeled to them falsely by supposedly thinking they landed in India, but again, that's another misnomer. And we can get into that in another podcast, because that brings up the Moors and the real people from India that were here prior to, which is why they had to label people Indians, because they were here from India, which if you look at the banyan trees down in South Miami, that correlate only between there and India, and other things that are very correlated only between here and India, and the relationship with the Moors and everything else. And again, these are subjects for many more podcasts. So if you like these type of subject matters, and you like delving into alternate histories and political history and political futures, then you need to subscribe and tell your friends and have everyone listen in, and have debates about this, more importantly, right? That's the big thing. Debate it. Talk about it. And today we're talking about, when do migrants become colonizers? When do the good become the evil? And have the migrants today cross that bridge of becoming just migrants and becoming colonizers and becoming the evil that the left likes to insinuate about those supposed white folk from Europe that came here so long ago? Which is funny, because they, like I said, they want to blame the white folk from Europe coming over here and colonizing, but while at the same time giving credit to the Moors, which we all know were not white. So this whole color of the skin issue has got to go out the window. Nobody believes in that crap. This is a tiny planet. We are all indigenous to the entire planet. We always have been. The fact that pyramids are littered everywhere across this planet shows and proves that we were united in history, and then we have been divided since, so that people could form these little farm governments and use us as slave labor devoted to their monetary system, controlled by whatever their a Federal Reserve System held for them. And now that is being overtaken by world banks. And again, all wars, no matter when you go back, will always be associated with some sort of banking system, some sort of monetary regulation system. Even if you look at not even governments in the way we think of them, but religious sects going back to ancient Phoenician times and Egyptian times, or Aztec and other place times, where sacrifices were the norm, and that is a payment to get your redemption within societal norms so that you could be part of society. And that is what this new system that they want to put everyone on, right? The social credit system. Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard of it, part of the DEI program. And obviously DEI is the preliminary work. And remember, all this goes back to the 2030 agenda, the 2025 agenda. There's also the 2040, 2045 agenda, and all these coalitions of all these other places. You guys need to look into all of that, because this stuff is all in white papers, and it's not like anyone's a mind reader. A lot of people have been talking about these things for a long time and mislabeled as conspiracy theorists. But as we can all see, like time work, everything is moved into place just as they stated it would be, when and where it would happen. And nothing is by circumstance, nothing is by chance. It is all by design. So that brings us back to, what is the design for bringing in the influx that they're bringing of so many people from so many locations? How many more cities are they trying to create? Obviously, there's a lot of space left in the United States, and maybe these other places are just that overcrowded. But if that's the case, why not just be honest with everybody? Why the big lie? What's going on behind the scenes? Is it to blend people? Because as we can see, back in the day when royalty would blend, it would be to unite two countries together so that they would no longer feud. And we had that, right? Did not the Indians blend with the white people so we would no longer feud? Did not the Spanish and the Mexicans, the Nahuatl, blend so that they would no longer feud? And did those not people blend with the white people so we would all no longer feud? And everyone blended with the black people so we would no longer feud? Are we all at this point not earth mutts, so we should no longer be feuding? Is my point. How many times do we have to interspecies F each other and intermingle and marry each other before this race war goes away that should really not exist? Seriously. Everyone has family members that are blended from all races, and nobody buys into this BS that the political systems are trying to put upon us. We all know this. However, there are a couple people that are so indoctrinated they can't seem to escape it, and we need to free their minds, because they are imprisoned in a mind cell that they cannot escape. And that's sad. I don't think migrants at any point in time are evil, and I don't think calling them colonizers after they've been here for a certain amount of time is going to change the situation. We all belong to this planet. This planet belongs to all of us. We are the stewards of it, of her, as she is continuing to grow, which is why all the pyramids are here, to monitor that growth, and it sends the signals back to the moon so that the moon can self-correct and adjust itself in real time, as it's still doing today, which is why Easter is always based on the first Sunday after a full moon, and all of their major holidays are based around the moon calendar, because the moon is artificial. Now, if you're interested in hearing about that, I suggest you look up my Pyramid Moon series. That's it for this episode regarding migrants versus colonizers. And it's important to note, I think, when we look at the sheer numbers of influx and how the left has indoctrinated a subset of people that want to blame 4 million to 6 million people for everything that's transpired hence. And that's just a ridiculous notion. So I suggest people really look at real history. They look at the real numbers. And when I say real history, I don't mean just looking in your own little sub bubble. I mean asking the real questions. You know, the word slave comes from, you know, Slavics, Yugoslavia, all these places over there. That's where slaves were created. White people were slaves too, and most people just don't understand that. The first slaves in America were not black, they were Irish. And like I stated earlier, I'm of Irish descent. So, yes, all of us have the same type of heritage, but yet a certain subset of culture wants to act like, you know, they are unique to that. Therefore, woe is them. And this is just ridiculous. We are all one, were we not? And we should still all be one today. Now, for those of you interested in combating and fighting social justice warriors with vocabulary ammunition against cultural appropriation, then you guys will definitely be interested in our upcoming series about, you guessed it, cultural appropriation. So, you know, guys, it's getting a little ridiculous out there, and I think most people understand it, but every time they try to speak up about it or speak their mind, they're labeled as this slander, that slander, and the other slander. And so we've come up with an interesting series that should try to dissuade people from talking in those terms, because it'll really point out how ridiculous it makes them sound. And if you're interested in you know, vocabulary ammunition against the left to fight them at their war of propaganda against the right, then definitely check out our upcoming series about cultural appropriation. And again, thanks for listening to Musicians, Politicians, Magicians. My name is Mark Christopher Garrett. And if you haven't already, check out some of my music. And if you are interested in losing tinnitus and fixing certain aspects about your, I can't say certain things online because I can't make claims that I can't make claims. But we all know that sonic frequencies can give benefit and aid to the human body. And if you are interested in those type of classes and one-on-one, I offer one-on-one classes starting at $20,000 and up. Contact me via my YouTube channel, and I will get back to you. All right, guys, that's it for today. And again, ask the question to everyone you know. When do migrants become colonizers? And when do the good become the evil? When do the do-gooders become the bad doers? And when do those seeking justice create injustice? When does right become might and become wrong? So hey, if you made it this far, please like and subscribe. It makes all the difference in the world. But more importantly, create the debate. Like, subscribe, create the debate. Like, subscribe, create the debate. Like, subscribe, create the debate.